You're listening to From Stillness, an audiobook for a mind in need of quiet. Perhaps you know this feeling well. You have ambitions. You've mapped out plans. You know, deep down, that you are capable of more. You've told yourself countless times, if I just did what I know I could do, everything would be different. But somehow you don't do it. And each time you don't, the ache grows stronger. A widening space between the person you could become and the person you currently are. It's not just a sense of disappointment, it's something heavier. A quiet pain that whispers questions you'd rather not face. What's wrong with me? Why can't I seem to move forward? Am I broken somehow? Most people try to skip past this pain. They drown it out with noise, with distractions, or with shallow advice. Just do it, they tell themselves. But beneath it all, the pain remains. And here's the truth. It isn't there because you're weak. It is there because your mind is trying to tell you something. It is a signal, not a flaw. So today, we are not going to run from this feeling. We're going to sit with it. We're going to understand it, because in that understanding lies the first step towards change. The truth is, what stands between you and your goals isn't a lack of ambition. It isn't laziness. It isn't a lack of intelligence. It's something far more subtle, a quiet space between intention and action. A space that can be bridged, not through force or guilt, but through awareness. And through small, deliberate steps. This is not a story of dramatic leaps. It is a story of gentle, grounded movement towards becoming the person you already know you could be. Let's begin. Now, let's give this space a name. The ambition-action gap. It is the quiet distance that separates where you are from where you long to be. Your potential stands on one side of a canyon, everything you hope to achieve, the person you believe you could become. And here you are, standing on the other side, looking across. At first, the gap seems small. You tell yourself you'll act tomorrow, or next week. But every time you don't, the gap widens, imperceptibly at first, then noticeably. The future you imagined begins to drift further away, and with each missed moment, the weight you carry grows heavier. This is not simply a metaphor. Over time, that weight manifests itself. Tension in your body, a subtle restlessness, irritability that spills into your days. And most insidiously of all, a creeping doubt about who you are. It starts quietly. Perhaps I'm not someone who can follow through. Maybe I'm the sort of person who dreams, but never delivers. And once this narrative takes hold, the gap is no longer about the goal itself. It becomes a question of identity, of self-worth. It touches every part of you, your confidence, your relationships, even the way you speak to yourself. What makes this cycle so difficult to escape is that you are not clueless. You know what to do. You've read the books, you've watched the videos, you've drafted the plans, you've mapped out the path ahead. But when the moment comes to take the first step, something holds you back. And with each hesitation, self-blame grows louder. What's wrong with me? Am I lazy? Do I just not want it enough? This is where most people spiral. But here's the truth. This gap is not about laziness, nor is it about a lack of knowledge or effort. It is about unseen forces, subtle patterns, and invisible blocks that quietly shape your behavior beneath the surface of conscious thought. And once you begin to see these forces clearly, to name them, to understand them, that's when the gap begins to close. Gently, quietly, step by step. Now that we've named the gap, let's look beneath it. Because what truly keeps you from moving forward isn't laziness. It isn't a lack of willpower. And it certainly isn't that you don't care. What holds you back are invisible blocks, subtle forces operating quietly in the background of your mind. They don't announce themselves as obstacles. They show up as perfectly reasonable thoughts, fleeting emotions, familiar habits, and unless you see them clearly, they will shape your choices again and again. So let's bring them into the light. The first is overwhelm. You have a vision, a big, beautiful vision of what you want to create. But that vision can become its own kind of trap. You see the end goal so clearly that the first step feels impossibly small, almost meaningless in comparison. When the mountain ahead looks too steep, the mind freezes. The sheer scale of the task triggers paralysis, and instead of starting, you escape. Perhaps you scroll your phone, Clean the house. Organize your files. You convince yourself you're preparing, but deep down you know it's fear in disguise. And so the days pass. The vision remains untouched. And the gap grows wider. The second invisible block is all or nothing thinking. This is especially common for those who grew up being seen as capable, intelligent, talented. Perhaps you've always been known as the person with potential, and so you hold yourself to a standard. If you can't do it perfectly, immediately, flawlessly, you won't do it at all. Because what if you try and fail? What if starting exposes that you are not as good as you thought? Rather than face that risk, the mind retreats into perfectionism. Better to not start than to confront the uncomfortable possibility of falling short. Of course, this is not conscious. It is your mind's way of protecting your fragile sense of self-worth. But in doing so, it locks you in place. Next is a more seductive block, the future fantasy trap. It feels like progress. It feels productive. You spend hours planning, researching, imagining, and for a moment, it soothes the discomfort. You're working on your goal after all. But here's the truth. Planning is safe. Dreaming is safe. As long as you remain in your mind, there is no risk of failure, no disappointment, no rejection, no uncomfortable learning curve. The danger is that your brain begins to reward this behavior. Each planning session gives a small hit of satisfaction, a false sense of achievement. And so the cycle continues. More plans, more notes, more perfect scenarios, but no action. Finally, there is a deeper block that is rarely spoken about: fear of success. Strange, isn't it? That we might fear the very thing we claim to want. But success brings change. It brings responsibility. It may alter your relationships. It may invite envy or criticism. It may require you to step into an unfamiliar identity. And for many, that quiet fear runs deep beneath the surface. It whispers, what if I'm not ready? What if I can't sustain it? What if I lose what I gain? And so, without even realizing, you hesitate, you stall. You subtly sabotage your own progress, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system perceives success as a threat to your current equilibrium. Now, if any of these patterns sound familiar, take heart. They do not mean you are broken. They do not mean you lack discipline. They are simply defense mechanisms, ways your mind has learned to shield you from shame, fear, and uncertainty. And though they are protective, they are not permanent. Once you see them, you can choose to meet them with understanding, not with judgment, but with a quiet curiosity. Because awareness is the first form of freedom. You cannot dismantle a block you do not see. But when you can say to yourself, this is overwhelm speaking. This is my old perfectionism. This is the fantasy trap. Suddenly, you are no longer under its full power. You begin to create space. Space for gentler action, for new patterns, for a different way forward. And that is what we will explore next, how to break this cycle. Not through force, not through shame, but through something much softer and far more sustainable. So, you've seen the patterns. You've named the invisible blocks. Now comes the question that matters most. How do you begin to move? Because here's the truth. Willpower alone won't save you. If it could, you would have acted already. You've tried pushing harder. You've tried waiting for the perfect moment. You've told yourself, next week I'll be ready. But the gap remains. So what works? It begins with something deceptively simple, returning to reality. Most ambitious people live too much in the world of ideas, in plans, in what could be. But change happens only when you bring your attention to what is, to the truth of this moment. So start here. Write down your goal clearly on paper. Then, beside it, write down exactly what you did this past week to move towards it. No judgment, no shame, just data. If your goal is to write a novel, and you wrote 0 words this week, write that. If you dream of starting a business, and made 0 sales or 0 calls, write that. If you want to regain your fitness but did 0 minutes of movement, write that. This is not about criticizing yourself. It is about meeting yourself honestly, because the mind loves to tell stories. I'm preparing. I'm waiting for the right time. I'm thinking it through. But when you place reality on paper, those stories dissolve. And from that place of honesty, the real work begins. Next, ask yourself, why didn't I act? Again, no judgment. You are not here to shame yourself. You are here to learn. Perhaps you didn't know where to start. Perhaps you were exhausted. Perhaps you were afraid. Perhaps you were trying to do too much at once. Whatever the answer, write it down. Because if you do not understand your own patterns, you will keep trying to solve the wrong problem. And most of the time, you don't need more motivation. You need to make the start smaller. This is where most people stumble. They set the bar too high. They try to leap across the entire canyon in one glorious act of effort. But your nervous system resists that. The bigger the step, the louder the inner objections. So instead, lower the activation energy. Make the first step so small that your brain cannot say no. If you want to run a marathon, don't start with 10 miles. Start by putting on your running shoes. If you want to write a book, don't set out to write a chapter. Commit to writing one sentence. If you want to meditate, don't aim for an hour. Sit for one mindful breath. Why does this work? Because the hardest part of any action is starting. Once you are in motion, inertia begins to carry you forward. But the bridge from 0 to 1 is the bridge you must consciously build. So here is your new goal. Create a daily minimum so small you cannot fail. 5 push-ups. 1 paragraph. 2 minutes of focused work. 1 email sent. It may feel trivial, it may feel silly. That's the point. You are not trying to prove anything. You are teaching your brain a new identity. I am someone who takes action. And consistency matters far more than intensity. It is better to do one small thing every day for a month than to burn out after one huge effort. Now, expect resistance. Some days you will not feel motivated. That is normal. On those days, do your tiny minimum, even if it feels pointless, even if you resent it. The key is to honor the commitment, not the feeling. And if you miss a day, which will happen, do not spiral. Do not call yourself lazy. Do not abandon the streak. Instead, ask, what got in the way? How can I make it even easier tomorrow? Treat each misstep as information, not as failure. Adjust, refine, simplify further if needed. Remember, momentum is more important than perfection. The goal is to build a rhythm, a habit of showing up. And there is one more shift to make. Stop chasing motivation. Motivation is fickle. It comes and goes. Instead, chase the streak. Chase the trust you are building with yourself. There is profound strength in becoming the person who acts even when it isn't exciting, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the voice in your head says, "What's the point?" Because this is how the ambition-action gap begins to close. Not through a grand leap, not through waiting for the perfect mindset, but through one clear, honest step at a time. And as you take these steps, something remarkable happens. You begin to shift your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is stuck. You start to see yourself as someone who moves, someone who shows up, someone who honors small commitments, and by doing so, builds the capacity for larger ones. And that is how lasting change begins. Not with force, but with quiet, consistent action rooted in presence. Now that you've begun to move, there is one final shift, perhaps the most important of all. A shift in mindset. Because even with all the tools and insights we've explored, your mind will still test you. Old patterns will whisper, "You're not doing enough. This isn't impressive. You should be further along by now." And here is where many people stumble. They forget that ideas and potential alone are never enough. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need to be ready. You do not need to feel inspired every day. You need movement. You need the courage to take the next small step, not because it guarantees success, but because it keeps you connected to the path. Here is a truth worth holding close. Those who achieve meaningful things are not the ones who feel motivated all the time. They are the ones who act despite how they feel, who honor their commitments even when the glow of initial excitement fades. And yes, you will slip. You will have days where nothing happens. You will meet resistance. You will meet doubt. But the goal is not perfection. The goal is persistence. The goal is to become someone who moves through life, not someone who waits endlessly for the perfect conditions. So when you miss a day, breathe. Gently return. Adjust your minimum if needed. Remember, momentum matters more than speed. Presence matters more than performance. And let go of the pressure to impress. Your worth is not measured by the size of your actions. Your worth lies in the simple fact that you are showing up here, now, imperfectly, and choosing to take a step forward. Each time you do this, you are retraining your mind. You are proving to yourself that action, even tiny, humble action, is normal, natural, available. And this is how you bridge the ambition-action gap. Not by leaping across the canyon, but by building a quiet bridge, one stone at a time. It is not grand, it is not fast, but it is real, and it is yours. So if you find yourself standing still again, watching your dreams drift further away, do not overthink. Do not wait for the right feeling. Take a step, any step. Make it so small your mind cannot resist it. Do it even if it feels foolish. Then do it again and again until this new rhythm becomes who you are. And when the voice of self-doubt returns, as it surely will, meet it with a gentle smile. You no longer need to outthink it. You are walking. That is enough. Trust this. Trust yourself. Because with each small, grounded action, you are becoming the person you were always capable of being. And that is a path worth walking, one quiet, deliberate step at a time. And so, remember this. You do not need grand leaps. You do not need to prove anything. You simply need to move, one small, quiet step at a time. Trust that each gentle action is building a bridge, not just towards your goals, but towards the person you are becoming. Let go of perfect. Let go of pressure. Simply return again and again to the next small step. And with that, take care of yourself, move softly, and I'll see you next time, here in the stillness.